The great hall on Nexus Prime was filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Some had 4 arms, others had no arms at all. Some breathed oxygen, others lived on pure energy. But all of them were here for the same reason. They were members of the Galactic Council, and today they would hear about a new species that had just learned to travel between stars. Elder Cathara stood in the center of the hall. Her body was made of living crystal that changed colors when she moved. She was old, very old. Her people, the Valinari, had been traveling space for thousands of years before most other species had even discovered fire. When Cathara spoke, others usually listened, but not today. "My fellow council members," Cathara began, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I come before you with a warning about the species called humans." A loud laugh came from the Draxian section. Commander Zexther stood up. He was 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. His people were warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. "Humans?" he said with a sneer. "Those primitive creatures who just figured out how to leave their own star system? What could they possibly do to us?" Other aliens in the hall began to murmur and laugh. The Zephyrians fluttered their wing-like appendages in amusement. The crystalline collective hummed in what passed for their laughter. Even the peaceful ethereal beings seemed to shimmer with what might have been humor. Kythera raised one of her crystal arms for silence. "Please, you must listen. 47 years ago, my people encountered the humans for the first time. It was during their early exploration missions. One of their ships, led by a captain named Jake Morrison, found one of our research stations." The laughter died down a little. The Valinari were known for being careful and smart. If they were worried about something, maybe others should pay attention. "At first, we thought they were like any other young species," Cathara continued. "Their technology was basic. Their ships were slow and clumsy. Their weapons were simple projectile devices. We could have destroyed them easily. So why didn't you?" asked Ambassador Veltar of the Oceanic Republic. His fish-like body floated in a tank of water that moved with him. "Because we saw something in them that frightened us," Cathara said. Her crystal body turned a deep red color, which meant she was very serious. "When our ships approached theirs, we expected them to run away like most young species do. Instead, they moved to protect their research team. Even though they knew they could not win, they would not abandon their people." Commander Zexther slammed one of his 4 fists on his seat. "That just proves they are stupid. Smart warriors know when to retreat." "No," Cathara said firmly. "It proves they are different. Let me tell you what happened next. When we made contact, their Captain Morrison was polite and respectful. But when we asked them to leave the system, he refused. He said his people had a mission to complete, and they would not leave until it was done." "And you let them stay?" asked Minister Korthek of the Silicon Federation. "We had to. You see, when we tried to force them to leave, something strange happened. They called for backup. Not just 1 or 2 ships, but their entire fleet in that sector. 37 vessels, all rushing to help one small research ship. They were ready to fight a battle they could not possibly win, just to protect their friends." The hall grew quiet. This was unusual behavior, even for a young species. "But here is the part that truly frightened us," Cathara continued. "When we finally agreed to let them finish their research, their Captain Morrison said something to me. He said, 'Thank you for being reasonable. But you should know, if you had hurt any of my people, we would have hunted you down. All of you. We would have followed you to the edge of the galaxy if we had to.'" "Empty threats," scoffed Zexther. "Young species always try to sound tough." "That is what I thought too," Cathara admitted. "But then I looked into his eyes, and I saw something there that I had never seen before. Not anger, not fear, not hatred. I saw certainty. This human truly believed that his people would chase us across the entire galaxy if we harmed them. And the terrifying part was, I believed. Him, too. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Velinari were known for their ability to read other species very well. So we let them complete their mission. Kithara went on, and we watched them. What we learned over the following months was disturbing. Humans do not think like we do. When we face a superior enemy, we retreat and find another way. When humans face a superior enemy, they find ways to become superior themselves. Impossible, said General Raxkull of the Militant Union. No species can evolve that quickly. But they do not evolve, Kithara explained. They adapt. They learn. They change their tactics, their weapons, their entire way of thinking. And they never, ever give up. During our observation period, we watched them fight a war on their own planet. It lasted 6 years. 6 years. Most species would have found a peaceful solution after 6 months. The hall was completely silent now. Even Commander Zexter had stopped laughing. And when the war ended, Kithara continued, they did not just make peace. They hunted down every single person who had committed crimes during the war. It took them 50 years, but they found them all. They tracked them to other continents, other countries, even to space stations. They never stopped looking. Ambassador, Veltar spoke up nervously. But surely this is just unusual behavior for a young species. They will grow out of it. Kithara's crystal body turned dark blue, the color of deep sadness. I do not think so. You see, we found records of their history going back thousands of years. This behavior is not new. There are stories of human armies that marched for 20 years to avenge a single insult. Of human explorers who sailed across empty oceans just to prove it could be done. Of human scientists who spent their entire lives trying to solve one problem. She paused and looked around the room. They call it determination. We should call it terrifying. Commander Zexter stood up again, but this time he did not look as confident. Even if this is true, what does it matter? They are still weak. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are primitive. For now, Kithara said quietly, but remember what I said. They adapt. They learn, and they never give up. If you attack them, they will not just fight back. They will study you, learn your weaknesses, and hunt you down. They will follow you across galaxies if they have to. The Great Hall was completely quiet. Outside, the twin suns of Nexus Prime were setting, casting long shadows across the chamber. So what are you asking us to do? Asked Minister Korvik. Simple, Kithara replied. Do not attack the humans. Do not threaten them. Do not give them a reason to hunt you. Because if you do, they will pursue you across galaxies. And they will never stop. Commander Zexter laughed again, but it sounded forced now. You ask us to fear a species that has not even left their own galaxy? Ridiculous. The Draxian Empire fears no one. As he spoke those words, Kithara's crystal body turned black, the color of death. She had seen the future in Zextera's eyes, and it terrified her. The warning had been given, but it fell on deaf ears. 6 months had passed since Elder Kithara's warning to the Galactic Council. Commander Zexter had returned to the Draxian Empire and quickly forgotten about the old crystal alien's words. He had more important things to think about, like expanding Draxian territory and showing the galaxy who the real masters were. Today was a good day for conquest. Zexter stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Talon, watching the scanner screens. His second-in-command, War Captain Thalanex, was pointing at a large dot moving slowly through space. Sir, we have found a perfect target, Thalanex said. With excitement, His gray skin was flushed with anticipation. A colony ship, completely defenseless. No weapons, no escort vessels, nothing. Zexter looked at the readings. The ship was huge, almost 2 miles long, but it was moving very slowly. According to their scans, it was full of civilians. "What species?" he asked. "Human, sir, Thulinex," replied. "The new species that just learned to travel between stars. They call their ship the New Horizon." Zexter smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Perfect. We can destroy them easily and take whatever resources they have. How many are on board?" "About 50,000, sir. Men, women, and children. They appear to be colonists heading to establish a new settlement." 50,000? Zexter was impressed. "That's a lot of slaves to sell. But no, I have a better idea. Let's just destroy them. It will send a message to other species that the Draxians are not to be messed with." Thulinex looked confused. "But sir, wouldn't it be more profitable to capture them?" "Profit is not always the point," Zexter explained. "Sometimes you need to show fear. Dead humans will make other species think twice before entering Draxian space." The truth was, Zexter was still angry about the council meeting. That old crystal creature had dared to suggest that the mighty Draxian Empire should fear humans. Humans! The idea was insulting. Destroying this colony ship would prove how wrong she was. On the New Horizon, Colony Administrator Lisa Parker was looking forward to their new home. The ship had been traveling for 3 years to reach the Kepler 442 system, where they would build humanity's first colony outside their own solar system. Lisa had spent months planning the new settlement. They would call it New Eden. "How much longer until we arrive?" she asked the ship's engineer, Danny Roberts. Danny checked his instruments. "About 6 hours until we reach orbit around the planet. The preliminary scans look good. Breathable atmosphere, plenty of water, and good soil. For farming," Lisa smiled. 50,000 people have left Earth to start a new life. Families with children, scientists, farmers, teachers, doctors, and engineers. They were carrying everything they would need to build a new world. Seeds, animals, machines, and most importantly, hope. I can't wait to feel real ground under my feet again, said Dr. Maria Santos, the colony's chief medical officer. 3 years in space is a long time. It will be worth it, Lisa replied. Our children will grow up under an alien sun, breathing alien air. We're making history. She had no idea that history was about to be made in a very different way. On the Iron Talon, Zexter was giving orders to his fleet. All ships, prepare for attack. We will destroy the human vessel completely. Leave no survivors. Sir, one of his officers spoke up nervously. Are you sure this is wise? They have not threatened us or entered our territory illegally. Zexter turned on the officer with fury. Are you questioning my orders? No, sir. It's just they are civilians, and destroying them might bring retaliation from their homeworld. Retaliation? Zexter laughed loudly. From humans? They barely have any warships, and the ones they do have are pathetic. What are they going to do? Throw rocks at us? The attack began without warning. The New Horizon had no idea that hostile ships were nearby until the first energy beams hit their hull. Alarms started blaring throughout the massive colony ship. We're under attack, Danny Roberts shouted into his communicator. All hands to emergency stations? But there was nowhere to run and no way to fight back. The New Horizon was built to carry people and supplies, not to fight wars. They had no weapons and no armor. They were completely helpless. Lisa Parker ran to the ship's communication center. Send a distress signal to Earth. Tell them what's happening. The communications officer, Pete Williams, was frantically working at his controls. I'm trying, but They're jamming most of our frequencies. Keep trying." Lisa shouted as another explosion shook the ship. On the Iron Talon, Thelanex was watching the destruction with satisfaction. "Their shields are failing, sir. Hull breaches on multiple decks." "Good," Zexter said. "Make sure you record everything. I want this to be a lesson for anyone who thinks Draxian space is safe for trespassing." The attack lasted only 20 minutes. The massive colony ship, which had taken 5 years to build and represented humanity's greatest achievement, was torn apart by Draxian weapons. Explosions ripped through the hull as the ship's systems failed one by one in the chaos. Lisa Parker and Danny Roberts managed to reach one of the escape pods. "How many people can we save?" Lisa asked. "Each pod holds 50 people," Danny replied, his hands flying over the controls. "But most of the pods have been destroyed." They could hear people screaming and running through the corridors. Families trying to stay together, parents searching for their children, crew members trying to save as many people as possible. But it was too late for most of them. "I've got a signal through to Earth," Pete Williams announced over the intercom, "transmitting all our data about the attack." That was the last thing he ever said. A moment later, a Draxian weapon hit the communication center directly. Lisa and Danny's escape pod was one of only 12 that managed to launch before the New Horizon exploded completely. Of the 50,000 people who had left Earth with dreams of a new world, only 600 survived. And most of those would die during the long journey back to human space. As the debris of the New Horizon drifted through space, Zexter was pleased with his work. "That should teach them," he said to Thelanex. "Now all of human space will know what happens when they enter areas controlled by the Draxian Empire." "Should we hunt down the escape pods, sir?" Thalanex asked. "No, let them go," Zexter replied. "I want them to carry the message back to their homeworld. Fear is more useful than complete destruction." It was the biggest mistake of his life. In the damaged escape pod, Lisa Parker and Danny Roberts worked to keep their fellow survivors alive. The pod's life support systems were damaged, and they had to put everyone into emergency hibernation to preserve oxygen. "Will the message get through to Earth?" Danny asked. "Pete said he transmitted our data," Lisa replied. "If it reaches Earth, they'll know what happened to us." As she activated the hibernation systems, Lisa looked out at the debris field that had once been humanity's greatest hope. 50,000 innocent people, dead for no reason except alien cruelty. "They have no idea what they've done," she whispered before falling into hibernation sleep. She was right. The Draxians had no idea what they had done. They had attacked species that never forgot and never forgave. They had murdered 50,000 humans who were guilty of nothing except wanting to build a better life. 18 months later, the message from the New Horizon reached Earth. It contained everything: the attack, the destruction, and the sensor data that identified the attackers as Draxian warships. The reaction was immediate and unanimous. Every nation on Earth, every political party, every human organization agreed on one thing: this could not stand. The Draxians had made the worst mistake any species could make. They had shown humanity that they were not alone in the universe, and they had shown them that they were not safe. War was coming, and unlike any war the galaxy had ever seen, this one would not end until every single Draxian paid for what they had done to the New Horizon. The hunt was about to begin. The message from the New Horizon reached Earth on a cold Tuesday morning. President Karen Hayes was drinking coffee in the Oval Office when her chief of staff burst through the door, his face pale and his hands shaking. "Madam President, you need to see this immediately," he said, holding out a data pad. Karen took the device and watched the transmission. Her coffee grew cold as she saw the attack unfold. 50,000 innocent people, destroyed without warning or reason by aliens who thought humans were weak and helpless. "Get me the Secretary of Defense," she said quietly, "and call an emergency session of the United Nations. Every world leader needs to see this." Within 6 hours, every human leader on Earth had watched the recording. The reaction was the same. Everywhere, shock, grief, and then cold, terrible anger. "They think we're weak," President Hayes said to the assembled United Nations. "They think because we've only been in space for a few decades, we're easy prey. They're about to learn how wrong they are." The vote was unanimous. Every nation on Earth agreed to pool their resources for one purpose: hunting down and destroying every Draxian in the galaxy. They called it the Human Expeditionary Force, and they put Admiral Roy Collins in charge. Collins was a smart man who had spent his whole career preparing for space warfare that most people thought would never happen. He was calm, methodical, and absolutely ruthless when he needed to be. When President Hayes asked him what he needed to win the war, his answer was simple: "Time and resources, Madam President. The Draxians have been in space for centuries. They have better weapons, better ships, and more experience. But they made one crucial mistake." "What's that?" "They think like every other alien species we've heard about. They think war is about winning battles and taking territory. They don't understand that for humans, war is about making sure the enemy can never hurt us again." Collins spent the next 3 years building the largest military force in human history. Every shipyard on Earth and in the colonies worked day and night building warships. Every military academy graduated classes early. Every factory was converted to making weapons and supplies. But the most important thing Collins did was study the enemy. He spent months analyzing every second of the New Horizon attack. He learned how Draxian weapons worked, how their ships moved, how their tactics functioned. And he waited for the right moment to strike. That moment came when human scouts found a Draxian border world called Crexmoor. It was a military outpost with about 10,000 Draxian soldiers and their families. It was also the closest Draxian world to human space. "This is where we start," Collins told his fleet commanders. "We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we make sure the entire galaxy knows that humanity is coming." The human fleet that attacked Crexmoor was smaller than the Draxian defenses, but it fought with a fury that the aliens had never seen before. Captain Amy Foster led a boarding party onto a Draxian battle station, even after her ship was badly damaged and losing air. "We can't breathe in here," one of her Marines shouted. "Then we'll hold our breath," Foster shouted back, leading the charge. With her oxygen mask torn and blood running down her face. The Draxians had expected humans to fight like other species, with careful tactics and strategic retreats when things got difficult. Instead, they found humans who kept attacking even when they were outnumbered, outgunned, and dying. War Captain Tholinex, who had helped destroy the New Horizon, was commanding the defense of Crexmoor. He watched in horror as human soldiers continued fighting even when they were badly wounded. "They're insane," he told his aide. "They should have retreated hours ago. Sir, should we ask for a ceasefire to discuss terms?" "Terms?" Tholinex was confused. "What terms? We haven't even won yet." But the humans weren't interested in terms or ceasefires. They had come to destroy Crexmoor completely, and that's exactly what they did. When the battle was over, the military base was in ruins, and most of the Draxian fleet was destroyed. The surviving Draxians retreated to their inner systems, expecting the humans to celebrate their victory and then negotiate for peace. That's what civilized species did. You fought until one side won. Then you made agreements about territory and trade, that the humans followed them. When the Draxians retreated again, the humans followed again. This pattern continued for 3 years, with human forces growing stronger and more experienced with each battle. What confused the Draxians was that the humans never tried to capture territory or demand surrender. They just kept hunting and destroying Draxian forces wherever they found them. Dr. Susan Walsh was a scientist who studied alien behavior. She traveled with the human fleet to learn about their enemies. After monitoring Draxian communications for months, she made a disturbing discovery. "Admiral Collins," she said during a briefing, "I think I understand why the Draxians are so confused by our behavior." "Explain," Collins replied. "Most alien species fight wars to gain something. Territory, resources, trade advantages. When the cost becomes too high, they negotiate peace and share whatever they were fighting over. And humans don't fight wars to gain things. We fight wars to remove threats permanently. The Draxians can't understand why we won't negotiate, because they don't realize we're not trying to beat them. We're trying to eliminate them entirely." Collins nodded grimly. "They killed 50,000 innocent civilians. There's nothing to negotiate." The war continued for 7 years. Every time the Draxians thought they had escaped far enough, human ships would appear on their sensors. The humans had learned to modify their engines to go faster, their weapons to hit harder, and their tactics to be more effective. Commander Tony Blake led a squadron that specialized in long-range pursuit. His ships could follow Draxian vessels for months without stopping. "It's simple," he told his pilots. "They run, we follow. They hide, we find them. They fight, we destroy them." The other alien species in the galaxy began to take notice. Zephyrians, who were peaceful traders, started reporting strange sightings of human warships in the most remote parts of space. "They appear out of nowhere," a Zephyrian captain told his government. "Always hunting, always searching. And they never stop to rest or trade or communicate. They just keep moving, like hunting animals that have picked up a scent." The ethereal collective, beings made of pure energy, began calling humans the inevitable ones. They spread stories throughout the galaxy about the species that could not be reasoned with, bargained with, or deterred, but the most frightening reports came from the Crystalline Syndicate, who monitored communications across dozens of star systems. They reported that human radio signals could be detected in areas where no human ships had been seen. "They're coordinating," the Syndicate's report stated, "sharing information across vast distances, always staying in contact with each other. It's like they're all part of one giant hunting pack." Meanwhile, War Captain Thalanex had become the leader of the surviving Draxian forces. What had once been a mighty empire was now a scattered collection of refugees running from system to system, always looking over their shoulders for human ships. How do we make them stop? One of his officers asked during a War Council meeting. "I don't think we can," Thalanex replied. "I've studied their behavior for 7 years. They don't want our territory, they don't want our resources, and they don't want to rule us. They want us dead, all of us. But why? The war started with just one attack." "Because," Thalanex said quietly, "we taught them that we're their enemies. And apparently, when humans decide you're their enemy, they never change their minds." The Draxians made one final desperate decision. They would retreat to the very edge of the galaxy, to systems so remote that no one had ever bothered to explore. Them. Surely the humans would not follow them that far. They were wrong. Captain Alex Stone led the first human fleet to the galactic rim. The journey took 2 years, pushing human technology to its absolute limits. Ships broke down, supplies ran low, and crew members died from the stress of the long pursuit. But they kept going. "Sir," Stone's navigator reported, "we've detected Draxian signals in the outer rim sectors." "Set course to intercept," Stone ordered. "Send a message back to Admiral Collins. Tell him we found them." The message took 6 months to reach human space. Collins, now an old man but still determined, read the report and smiled grimly. The hunt was almost over, but Thulenex had one more surprise waiting. In a hidden facility on a dead world at the galaxy's edge, his scientists had been working on a desperate project. If they couldn't outrun the humans, maybe they could escape to somewhere the humans could never follow. They were building ships capable of traveling to another galaxy entirely. The final phase of the hunt was about to begin. War Captain Thulenex stood in the hidden shipyard, watching his engineers put the finishing touches on the most desperate project in Draxian history. The ships looked strange, longer and thinner than normal Draxian vessels, with massive engines that took up half their length. "Are you certain these will work?" he asked his chief scientist, Dr. Vex Myra. "The calculations are sound," she replied, though her voice showed doubt. "The engines should be able to push us beyond the galactic barrier and into the void between galaxies. But the journey will take many years, and there's no guarantee we'll find anything habitable on the other side. Better than staying here and waiting for the humans to find us," Thulenex said grimly. For 10 years now, the humans had been hunting his people across the galaxy. Every time the Draxians thought they had found safety, human ships would appear on their sensors like vengeful ghosts. They had lost 90% of their population, and the survivors were scattered across a dozen star systems at the galaxies edge. "How many ships are ready?" Thulenex asked. 12, Dr. Vex Myra replied. "Enough to carry about 50,000 survivors to wherever we're going." 50,000. Once, the Draxian Empire had ruled over billions. Now they were down to the same number of people the humans had lost on the New Horizon. Thulenex wondered if that was intentional, if the humans had planned it that way. "Sir," one of his communications officers came running up. "We're detecting human ships in the outer system." Thulenex felt his heart sink. Even here, at the very edge of known space, the humans had found them. "How many?" 3 ships. "Sir, moving fast and heading directly for us." "Begin the evacuation immediately," Thulenex ordered. "Load as many people as possible into the intergalactic ships. We leave in 6 hours." Captain Alex Stone stood on the bridge of his ship, the Relentless, and watched the Draxian facility grow larger on his screen. After 10 years of hunting, his hair had turned gray and his face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes still burned with determination. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the planet," his sensor officer reported. "It looks like they're powering up some kind of new engine system." "New ships?" Stone asked. "Yes, sir. But these are different. Much larger engines, different configuration. I've never seen anything like them." Stone frowned. After a decade of fighting Draxians, he knew their ship designs by heart. If they were building something new, it meant they were planning something desperate. "Send a message to Admiral Collins," he ordered. "Tell him we found a major Draxian facility, but they appear to be building escape vessels of unknown design." The message would take months to reach human space, but Stone knew what the Admiral's response would be. Destroy them all. Take no prisoners. Make sure none of them escape to threaten humanity again. But as Stone watched the sensor readings, he realized the Draxians might escape after all. Those engines were unlike anything he had ever seen. If they were what he thought they were, the remaining Draxians were about to try something that no species in the galaxy had ever attempted. They were going to leave the galaxy entirely. "Sir, the Draxian ships are launching," his tactical officer announced. Stone watched as 12 strange vessels lifted off from the planet below. They were moving slowly at first, but their acceleration was incredible. Within minutes, they were traveling faster than anything Stone had ever seen. "Pursue them," he ordered. "Sir, we can't match that speed. Our engines aren't designed for those kinds of forces." Stone slammed his fist on his command chair. After 10 years of hunting, the last Draxians were about to escape. But even as he watched them disappear into the void between galaxies, he made a promise to himself. "Set course for the nearest human base," he ordered. "Emergency speed. We need to report this immediately." The message reached Admiral Collins 18 months later. By then, Collins was 78 years old and officially retired, but he still advised the government on Draxian matters. When he read Stone's report, he sat quietly for a long time. President Hayes, now in her second term, came to see him personally. "Admiral, what are your recommendations?" "They've escaped to another galaxy," Collins said simply. "Probably Andromeda, based on the trajectory Stone observed. Can we follow them?" Collins was quiet for a moment. "It would take at least 15 years to build ships capable of intergalactic travel. The crews would have to live their entire adult lives in space. Many would die during the journey. And we have no idea what we'd find when we got there." "That's not what I asked," President Hayes said firmly. "I asked if we can follow them." Collins looked at her and saw the same determination that had driven humanity for the past decade. "Yes, Madam President. We can follow them. Then we will." The Intergalactic Pursuit Project became the largest undertaking in human history. Every scientific mind on Earth and in the colonies worked on solving the technical problems. How do you build ships that can travel between galaxies? How do you keep crews alive for 15-year journeys? How do you carry enough supplies for an expedition that might last decades? Dr. Jennifer Walsh, daughter of the xenobiologist Susan Walsh, who had died during the war, led the research team. "The biggest challenge isn't the technology," she told the project committee. "It's the human element. We're asking people to spend their entire lives pursuing an enemy to another galaxy." "Will we find volunteers?" asked General Patricia Morgan, who had taken over military operations. "Are you serious?" Dr. Walsh laughed. "We have a waiting list of 50,000 applicants already. Half of them are children of New Horizon colonists. The other half are veterans of the Draxian War who can't stand the idea that some of the enemy escaped." Commander Tony Blake, now in his 50s, was chosen to lead the first intergalactic fleet. His children had grown up hearing stories about a new horizon and the long hunt that followed. His daughter Sarah was now a ship captain herself, and his son Mike was a combat engineer. "You don't have to do this," Blake told his family before departing. "The journey will take 15 years. Each way, I'll be an old man if I ever come back." "Dad," Sarah said, putting her hand on his shoulder, "some of the people who murdered the New Horizon colonists are still alive out there. We can't let them think they've escaped justice. Besides," Mike added, "someone has to finish what we started." The first intergalactic fleet launched 5 years after the Draxians had escaped. 20 ships, carrying 10,000 crew members and their families. They had been designed to be self-sufficient, carrying manufacturing equipment, farms, schools, and everything needed to support a small civilization during the long journey. As Blake watched their home galaxy shrink behind them, he thought about Elder Kithra's warning from so many years ago. She had said that humans would pursue their enemies across galaxies. She had been right. The journey was harder than anyone had imagined. 3 ships suffered critical failures and had to be abandoned, their crews transferring to other vessels. Equipment broke down constantly in the void between galaxies. Where there were no resources to repair or replace it, children were born during the journey who had never seen a planet or breathed natural air. They grew up knowing only the inside of spaceships and the endless darkness between galaxies. But they also grew up knowing why they were there and what they would do when they arrived. "Are we there yet?" 5-year-old Emma Chun asked her mother during the 10th year of the journey. "Not yet, sweetheart," Commander Lisa Chun replied, "but soon. And when we get there, we're going to finish a job that started before you were born." Meanwhile, in the Andromeda Galaxy, the surviving Draxions, had found a new home. War Captain Thulanix, now calling himself Emperor of the new Draxian Republic, had established settlements on 3 worlds in a remote star cluster. "We made it," Dr. Vexmira said to him as they stood on the balcony of his palace, looking up at the alien stars of their new galaxy. "We're safe. The humans could never follow us here." Thulanix wasn't so sure. He had spent 15 years running from humans, and he had learned to respect their determination. "Maybe," he said quietly, "but I've learned never to underestimate them." "It's impossible," Vexmira insisted. "The journey between galaxies would take decades with their technology. And even if they tried, most of them would die during the trip." "You're probably right," Thulanix agreed. But he kept looking up at the stars, wondering if somewhere out there in the void, human ships were slowly making their way toward him. He was right to wonder. 15 years after leaving their home galaxy, Commander Blake's fleet detected the gravitational signature of Andromeda growing stronger each day. They had made it. Against all odds, they had crossed the void between galaxies. "Sir," his navigation officer reported, "we're detecting radio signals from the inner spiral arms. The patterns match Draxian communication protocols." Blake smiled grimly. "Set course to intercept and send a message back to Earth." The message would take 15 years to reach home, but Blake knew his people would be waiting to hear it. It would say simply, "We found them." The final hunt was about to begin. 25 years had passed since the New Horizon was destroyed. Emperor Thulanix, formerly war captain of the Draxian Empire, stood in his throne room on the planet Kethvar in the Andromeda Galaxy. His once gray skin had turned almost white with age, and his forearms moved slowly as he read the latest reports. "Your Majesty," his aide, General Colrex, entered the room with worry on his face. "We have a problem." "What now?" Thulanix asked tiredly. Leading the survivors of his people had been harder than he expected. Many had died during the long journey between galaxies, and those who survived often blamed him for their exile. "Power. Scouts have detected ships approaching from the void between galaxies." Thulanix felt his blood turn cold. "Ships? What kind of ships?" "Unknown design, Your Majesty. But the energy signatures, they match human technology." For a moment, Thulanix couldn't speak. It seemed impossible. Humans couldn't have followed them across the vast emptiness between galaxies. The journey would take decades, and most of them would die trying. But he remembered Elder Kithra's warning from so long ago. "They will pursue you across galaxies." "How many ships?" he asked quietly. 17, Your Majesty. "They appear to be heavily damaged from the long journey, but they're still operational." 17 ships. Against the 3 worlds and 48 vessels that made up the new Draxian Republic. The odds were in his favor, but Thulanix had learned not to trust odds when fighting humans. "Send word to all our forces," he ordered. "Full military alert. And prepare a message for the human fleet." "What should the message say, Your Majesty?" Thulanix thought for a moment. "Tell them ... tell them we surrender." General Colrex looked shocked. "Your Majesty, we outnumber them. We could destroy their damaged ships easily." "You don't understand," Thulanix replied. "I've been running from humans for 25 years. I've seen what they're capable of. These 17 ships represent something more frightening than a large fleet. They represent proof that humans will literally chase us to the end of the universe if they have to." On the bridge of the Relentless 2, Commander Tony Blake read the Draxian surrender message with no emotion. His hair was completely gray now, and his face was marked by the stress of 15 years in deep space. Around him, his crew waited for orders. "Sir," his communications officer asked, "should we accept their surrender?" Blake was quiet for a long moment. He thought about the 50,000 innocent people who had died on the new horizon. He thought about the 10-year war that had followed. He thought about the 15-year journey through the void that had cost them 3 ships and 2,000 lives. "No," he said finally. "Send them a message. Tell them that surrender is not acceptable. Tell them that 25 years ago they attacked innocent civilians without warning or mercy. Tell them that humanity has spent a quarter-century crossing the galaxy and the void beyond it to deliver justice. And then, sir, and then we finish what they started. The final battle above Kethvar was not like the battles of the old war. The humans were outnumbered, and their ships were damaged from the long journey. But they fought with a desperate fury. That came from knowing they were too far from home to retreat. Colonel Beth Martinez led the assault on the Draxian flagship. Her grandmother had been scheduled to board the New Horizon, but had missed the departure due to illness. Beth had grown up hearing stories about the colony that never was, the 50,000 people who died for the crime of wanting a better life. "Remember the New Horizon!" she shouted as her Marines stormed through the Draxian ship's corridors. Draxians fought bravely, but they were fighting against something more than human soldiers. They were fighting against human memory, human determination, and human refusal to let injustice go unpunished. Emperor Thilanex made his last stand in his throne room, surrounded by his personal guards. When the human soldiers finally reached him, he was alone, his guards having died protecting him. "You came all this way just to kill an old alien?" he asked Colonel Martinez as she pointed her weapon at him. "We came all this way to deliver a message," she replied. "Actions have consequences. You can run to the edge of the universe, but justice will find you eventually. And what message will you send to the rest of the galaxy?" Martinez thought about her grandmother, about the stories of the New Horizon, about the 25-year hunt that had brought humanity to another galaxy. That we are inevitable. As Thilanex died, he activated one final transmission that broadcast across all Draxian frequencies throughout both galaxies. His last words were a warning to any species that might be listening. The ancient ones were right. Do not attack the humans. They will follow you across the void itself. They will follow you until the stars burn out. We chose to be their enemies, and they chose to be inevitable. The battle for the new Draxian Republic lasted 3 days. When it was over, every Draxian military vessel had been destroyed, and the survivors were left on their 3 worlds with no way to leave the Andromeda Galaxy. Commander Blake stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at the alien stars of Andromeda. His mission was complete, but the cost had been enormous. Of the 20 ships that had left human space 15 years ago, only 12 remained. Thousands of good people had died making the journey. "Sir," his aide, Lieutenant Greg Turner, joined him. "The colonies have been neutralized. What are your orders?" Blake was quiet for a moment. "We're going to build a monument," he said finally. "A monument, sir?" "Yes, right here in the Andromeda Galaxy. Something permanent that will remind everyone what happens when you attack innocent humans." The monument was built on a small moon, orbiting Kethvar. It was simple but massive, visible from space. The inscription, written in dozens of alien languages, read, "Here ends the hunt for the destroyers of the New Horizon. They chose to murder 50,000 innocent humans. We chose to be inevitable. Let this be a lesson to all who would harm the innocent. Justice may be slow, but it is certain. There is nowhere in the universe you can hide from the consequences of your actions." Commander Blake, now an old man, stood before the completed monument. Lieutenant Turner, who had been a young officer when the journey began, was now middle-aged. With children of his own, "Do you think it was worth it, sir?" Turner asked. Spending 25 years hunting them across the galaxy? Blake thought about the question for a long time. "Ask me again in 100 years," he said finally. when the galaxy has learned the lesson we came here to teach. The story of the human pursuit of Adraxians spread throughout both galaxies. The peaceful Zephyrian traders carried the tale to thousands of worlds. The energy beings of the ethereal collective whispered it across space itself. The ancient Valinari, including Elder Kithara, added it to their historical records as proof that they had been right to warn against attacking humans. 50 years later, when new species achieved space travel and asked about humans, they were always given the same advice. Be polite, be respectful, and never, ever attack them first. Because if you do, they will hunt you down no matter how far you run or how long it takes. The galaxy had learned a simple truth. Humans were not the strongest species, or the smartest, or the most advanced, but they were the most determined. And sometimes, determination was the most frightening weapon of all back in human space. The families of the New Horizon colonists finally had closure. Their loved ones had been avenged, their deaths had meaning, and the galaxy now knew that humanity would never allow such an attack to go unpunished. The monument in Andromeda stood as eternal proof of a simple message. If you attack innocent humans, there is nowhere in the universe you can hide. Justice may take decades, it may cost thousands of lives, and it may require crossing the void between galaxies, but it will find you eventually. The hunt was over. The lesson had been taught, and the galaxy would never forget.